Alright guys, we're back in my garage, and today we're going to be talking about the history of B58 development. And I know a lot of you guys are kind of new to the platform, or just in general. Sometimes I feel like when we're having conversations, the history isn't there, and people don't really know kind of the development of what we've had in the past and what's been working for years and years. Every time a new part comes out, it seems like we completely forget what we were doing before and just try to restart everything from scratch. And of course, it's not really necessary. There's a lot of stuff that we can learn from where we've been. So I just wanted to create this video to kind of document how things came to this point and what we did before we had all of these plentiful options available to upgrade our cars. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of insight on how things used to be. So to start off, the B58 came out around 2015. A lot of people started picking up their 340i's in late 2015, and it was showing some pretty good initial results. On the dyno, it was showing that it was underpowered, just like a lot of older BMWs with turbo engines. So that was really good news, and we really felt like this platform was going to be a strong one for future development. But there were a lot of issues, the main one being that the DME was locked. So everybody that's got, a June 2020 or later model vehicle right now, we know what you guys were dealing with, because when these cars came out, the original OBD unlock didn't work from older F30s or F-Series BMWs. So that completely needed to be redeveloped. So what that meant is we were pretty much stuck with piggybacks. And there were a couple different ones out there. Of course, we had the cheaper, just kind of boost controller ones, like the initial Dynon piggyback, as well as the JB Plus from Burger Motorsports. But the most popular one was definitely the JB4, because this one, just like now, it had the most configurability. It supported a lot of additional features like on-the-fly switching, as well as logging, so that you can make sure that your car was running safely. And so this was really nice. You were able to add a little bit of boost and drive your car around with more power. Even though the BMW OEM and performance tune was available, it was more expensive and made less power. So this was kind of the quote unquote better value option. So at this time, things were pretty good. Some basic bolt-ons, a JB4 could get you around 400 wheel horsepower, but we were limited to that 400 wheel horsepower. And the big issue is that in the DME, there was a limitation that a piggyback couldn't get around. The fuel was limited, and if you pushed it past 400 or so, the car began to just lean out. It wouldn't add extra fuel to compensate for the extra boost, and you would begin to go more and more lean until potentially you would just completely damage your engine. So 400 wheel horsepower was kind of considered the safe limit. What Burger Motorsports did was begin going heavy into meth development, and so they had a meth injection kit that they sold with a spacer for your throttle body, as well as a tank that went in the trunk of most F-Series BMWs, and that allowed you to get past those fuel limits. Burger Motorsports themselves dynoed around 460 wheel horsepower on the stock turbo, so this made it look really promising. It was exciting to know that hopefully one day flash tuning would be available and we could make that kind of power with the stock turbo without needing any extra fueling, but time would kind of tell with that. We also saw a couple big turbo options come out on the market. Pure, of course, had their Pure Stage 1 and Pure Stage 2. The Pure Stage 1 was just kind of the compressor replacement that installed in the stock exhaust housing. And then the Pure Stage 2 was the full hybrid setup where they modified the exhaust housing and the compressor to fit larger wheels. Also, Big Boost had a kit out at this time. They were the main full frame turbo kit available to us. But since we were so limited by fueling and you had to add so much meth just to get higher horsepower levels, those turbos were really rare and really not that popular. But eventually we started getting some hints that the DME was going to be unlocked. There were a couple companies around, especially in Europe, that said they were able to get unlocks working, but most of them weren't practical. You had to go to their shop wherever they were, and sometimes they said it took up to 8 hours to completely unlock the DME, so it just wasn't really widely used or acknowledged. But eventually we got true OBD unlock and flashing to be released by some major tuning companies. So the first one, believe it or not, was Mission Performance. They released the M Flasher that worked on PC as well as iOS, and this allowed you to flash your car from home, unlock it from home, and they had a couple basic maps that you could use to get a little bit more power out of your car. Now, this wasn't as popular. Some people were waiting for some of the major platforms to come onto the market, but being first definitely helped them. They also were pretty expensive initially, so that kind of hurt their sales a little bit. Eventually, MG Flasher came in. These guys came in focused on the B48 and B58. So this hyped up a lot of people, knowing that they were specifically targeting our engine platform. And so they did get a lot of sales initially, but shortly after, boot mode came out, and then about a month later, MHD came out. And that pretty much took the community by storm. So all of us split up, pick our poison, and kind of moved forward from there. They each had some pretty basic maps, like I said, just stage 1 and stage 2 on pump gas. Different octane levels were available, but that's as much as we got. So you basically had your stock engine tune or a tune for a downpipe, and then if you wanted anything past that, you got a custom tune. Outside of that, all of them pretty much had the same options, adjustable burbles and things like that. But things like MHD only being available on Android or boot mode having a more complicated wireless setup made a lot of people kind of split up to figure out which one they thought was the best for them. You were a little bit limited on how they actually worked depending on the platform at the time. Now, a little known fact during this time, a lot of people got really excited about E85. During the beta testing phase for some of these platforms, we saw tuners testing full E85 on the B58. So this was really exciting to know that the car could support E85 from the factory. Unfortunately, we didn't actually get off-the-shelf maps for full E85. Eventually, they came out with E30 maps later that summer in 2019, but we did get some E85 tunes from people that decided to go the custom tuning route. So of course that was fun for a while, but eventually everybody wanted more. Even me, I tried stage 193, and then I bumped up to E30 a little later that year for a little bit more, but I was looking for the next big jump. And we started getting some rumors that there was a fuel pump upgrade available from the new generation of the B58. And the first person that came out with this was Mission Performance. Now, I don't want this to start a lot of drama or anything. I'm just going to tell this exactly like it is, so you guys can be the judge for how this all came together. But Mission Performance had posted on their shop car, they tried out the TU high pressure fuel pump. To them, this seemed like the best option to increase fuel on our Gen 1 B58s. But what they found was that there were a couple issues with making it work. One, they weren't able to make it fit the stock cylinder head. So they actually had to machine the cylinder head and modify things to make the fuel pump fit. Then once they tried to start the car, it tried to ramp up fuel pressure way higher than our stock injectors were actually able to manage because it was running at the higher pressure from the B58 TU. So they had to modify the tune to make sure that it was running at the right fuel pressure. And then they began running higher levels of E85, and it actually fried out their DME. So they had to back off the E85 content, and they ended up dialing in around E60, and that's where they posted up most of their results. Now, this was something they kind of just put out there for people if they were interested. They said that they would do this service to make your car fit with the upgraded fuel pump for an undisclosed cost. So people that were in California near them could go there and get this done. But they didn't get a lot of customers because it didn't seem like something that was easy to do. And not sharing the cost made it seem like it was way more expensive than what most people wanted to do. So we just kind of waited around for more information. Then a little bit later that year, we got news from Pure Turbos, and they said that they were testing a new Pure Turbo upgrade, and they actually tried it with the new TU pump, and basically they found that even with no tuning changes, they were able to run it fine. All they did was bump up boost to take advantage of the increased fuel headroom, and they posted several dynos making anywhere from 550 to 600 wheel horsepower. So again, I know a lot of people ask me why I think the TU pump can support 600 wheel horsepower. This isn't something I made up. I wasn't even the first person to say this or do this. This actually came from Pure Turbos themselves. They posted these dynos on their Instagram, and you can still find them there to this day. So that was really good news, but of course the community was confused because one shop is saying it requires all this extensive work, and another shop is saying it's a bolt-on upgrade. So what ended up happening is me reading all of this just decided I'll try it out on my own car. So I searched through Real OEM, found the part number, found a car that was actually being parted out in Europe, and bought the fuel pump on eBay, had it shipped here, and installed it on my car. I know a lot of you guys probably found my YouTube from my DIY that I posted for the TU high pressure fuel pump, almost 2.5 years ago. And that was something I installed over winter break in 2019. I just decided to try it. I felt like it would work. Everything in my mind made me think that it should work. So I just installed it. I actually flashed the stock tune, and I drove it to Cars and Coffee the next day, even though it was like freezing cold and I was still on summer tires. I just wanted to prove that it would work. So that's why that DIY was so long. Some of you guys were really nice and just said it was a really detailed DIY. I'm guessing that was your polite way of saying that it's 3 times longer than it needed to be. But at the time, we just needed proof. There were so many companies sharing information in little bits. I thought that would be the best opportunity to share it with everybody in full, with logs and data showing that it worked and it's this simple to install. So I went through the whole process of tuning it on E85 again, just because I felt like that should work. And right after I completed my testing, I posted up more data for everybody to show that this was possible. About 3 weeks later, the Stage 2 Plus maps came out. So basically, if I had waited a little bit longer, I could have had off-the-shelf maps to upgrade my car with the fuel pump for free. But, it was a good process going through the E85 tuning. I was also able to compare it to the E30 off-the-shelf maps and show people that it really didn't make the car that much faster going to full E85. So that's why, I tell a lot of you guys it makes more power to go with an ethanol mix than full E85. I've actually tested it myself back to back on different direct injection setups. It's always going to make more power with an ethanol mix. That's basically what we proved out back in 2020. So yeah, that was basically it. Everybody was just kind of enjoying their cars at that point, and things really started to accelerate with the Supra coming out. We saw the new Pure 800 turbo finally be released. Turbo upgrades from DOCRace, like the turbo kit I have on my car, came out. We had the Dorsch fuel pump, the spool fuel pump, just lots of upgrades started coming down. And that's really when things started going. So I think that's probably where I'll stop. I mean, that's kind of brought us to where we are today. Of course, we have countless turbo upgrades, intake manifolds, transmission upgrades, everything you could need to push your car even up to 1,000 wheel horsepower. But it definitely was a long ride to get here. A lot of testing and development went into that, and talking to some of the OGs that have been here since day one will definitely give you more insight into why we should be grateful for what we have now and what you can do to make pretty much any amount of power on pretty much any fuel that you might want. Also, I want to give a big shout out to Big Boost. I know I kind of mentioned him in the beginning as one of the original big turbo options, but Juan over there has literally been pushing this platform since day one. Back in 2017, when we were all arguing about what intake is best, he came in like a drunk uncle and he said, I want a bigger turbo. So he made the B58 turbo kits. It's gone through several iterations and generations since then. He's offered countless different turbo options and different features for different people that want it. But even back in 2018, he made over 600 wheel horsepower on their shop MT40i. That car was pushing with race gas, pump gas. It had charge pipe injection and throttle body injection. Everything he could do to get as much fuel in there as possible. He still wanted to make it happen. With flash tuning coming available, he ended up making 700 wheel horsepower in early 2019. Then later that year, he found more opportunities to improve and pushed it to 800 wheel horsepower. And then in 2020, he built the engine and pushed it to 900 wheel horsepower. And he even got the car to dyno over 1,000 wheel horsepower. It was the first Gen 1 B58 to do that. So it was super impressive to see. I know everybody doesn't care about dyno numbers, and unfortunately, the location of their shop car is in an area where DA is really high, so it hasn't put down the most impressive numbers for the amount of power it's making. But if you look at 340i records for like 0 to 60, quarter mile, 60 to 130, 100 to 200, pretty much all of them are carried by Big Boost cars. So it's been a super impressive upgrade, and again, just a really big shout out to him for continuing to push the platform, even when we didn't have a lot of support and resources available. So yeah, I think that's it for this video. Hopefully you found this informational. Again, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of insight on where we've come from and what things were like before we just had countless off-the-shelf maps with different fuel options and things like that. Again, you can make pretty much anything work. Whatever your goals are, you need to plan out your build accordingly, but there are ways to safely dial in your car with countless different upgrades. So it's really up to you to pick what's best for your specific goals. So thank you guys for watching. I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.
dook, dook, dook.